Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
How much is an hour of your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the ability to focus your time on what you do best, not on tedious mailing and shipping tasks. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. More than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Go to Stamps.com/audio for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 226 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing amazingly.
Yeah?
You and I just recorded a good episode for True Crime All the Time on Thomas Olson.
We certainly did.
We're headed to Iceland, so it's a fascinating story, but for us, the research was very interesting because we learned a lot.
We did.
Some of the pronunciations are tough.
You had a hard time. I had
did.
them down perfectly.
You did, as always. Before we jump into this Unsolved episode, let's give our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Haley Janik.
Hey, Haley.
Joanne O'Meara.
What's going on, O'Meara?
Gracie.
Good old Gracie.
Elena Caballero.
Ooh, Caballero.
Tracy Hart.
Hey, Tracy.
DC.
What's up, DC?
Judy Gall.
Hey, Judy.
Shelby Scott.
What's happening, Shelby?
Sarah Zazer.
Hey, Zaja.
Serena.
Oh, hi, Serena.
Patty Haas.
Hey, appreciate that, Patty.
Don Abramo.
Ooh, Abramo.
Jessica Tansman.
Hey, Jessica.
James Burgess.
What's happening, James?
Sharon Smith.
Appreciate that, Sharon.
Donna Lamb.
Hey, Donna Lamb.
Alan.
Hey, what's up, Alan?
And last but not least, Patty Nazer.
Good old Patty.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Jessica Cheney.
Oh, thanks, Jessica.
So we appreciate all the new support, the continued support. Jessica's been with us a long time. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Laura Western.
Appreciate that, Laura.
Julie Shantz.
Hey, Julie.
Sarah Madej.
What's going on, my day?
And Jennifer Ailman.
Hey, Jennifer.
So thanks to all of you as well. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Man, I am ready.
We are talking about the murder of Barbara Barnes in our home state of Ohio. We're headed up to Steubenville, pretty far north from us, a little closer to the Cleveland area.
Yeah, it's strange that we have a case in Ohio. Just not a lot of crime happens in Ohio.
Oh, no crime here at all.
Yeah.
Barbara Barnes was just 13 years old when she disappeared on the morning of December 7th, 1995, as she was walking to school. Her body was later found in a shallow grave by the side of a creek 2 months later. Despite intensive efforts by law enforcement, nobody has ever been charged with her murder, and her case remains unsolved and cold after 25 years. So let's talk about Steubenville, Ohio, a little bit. It's a small town located on the Ohio River, just across from West Virginia's Panhandle, and only a few miles west of Pennsylvania. I said it was more towards Cleveland. It's actually probably closer to Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania is just 40 miles away from there. Steubenville is best known for Fort Steuben, a reconstructed military fort from the 1800s, And at Christmas time, the holiday nutcrackers that decorate the town. So, this is kind of interesting, Gibbs. You have hundreds of life-size nutcrackers. Kind of fascinating to see, right? And it draws tourists to the town to shop. They have a festive trolley that you can ride that's all decked out for the winter holidays. It's kind of like a Norman Rockwell holiday painting.
Yeah.
The problem is the 1995 holiday in Steubenville was not a Norman Rockwell type picturesque scene.
No, it was not.
Gibbs, before Barbara went missing and was later found murdered, the Barnes family had already dealt with quite a bit of tragedy. According to WestVirginiaNews.com, by 1995, Kathy Barnes, a mother of 3 in her 30s, had already lost her husband Gary in a violent murder. Barbara Barnes was just 6 years old when her father was murdered in 1989 after living through such a horrific tragedy. By 1995, 6 years since the violent death of Gary, the family had started to rebuild their lives, and they were finding their way without him.
Not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all. Not easy to lose, a loved one, a husband, wife, mother, father at all, but to lose them in such a violent way.
Right.
A murder. Very tough. But somehow the family managed to go on, as families do, right? People are resilient. It's tough, but they find a way to move forward. No doubt they all miss Gary. He was described as a good man and a good father to his young kids. Gary was shot to death on his way home from the American Legion. And he was shot by a known family friend named Mike Dugan. Dugan shot Gary twice, killing him. In the aftermath of Gary's murder, the Barneses relied on family, including Kathy's sister Mary and her husband, Louis Boyce. Kathy and her children moved into an apartment in the same building as the Boyce family. It was a small one-bedroom apartment where the kids slept in the bedroom and Kathy slept in the living room. Kathy worked a little bit, but she mainly relied on Social Security payments to support her family. By December 1995, 13-year-old Barbara Barnes, the oldest of the children, was in the 8th grade at Harding Middle School. Barbara was 5 feet tall. She weighed about 75 pounds. Her hair was long and dark, and she usually put it up in a ponytail. Her younger siblings rode the bus to their elementary school, but Barbara liked to walk to school. Thursday, December 7th, 1995, was no different from any other normal weekday morning. Barbara woke up, got herself ready for school, and helped her mother and brother and sister before she headed out. Her aunt's mother-in-law, Gertie Boyce, who lived in the apartment across the hall from the Barnes family, waved at Barbara from her window as she left, and Barbara returned the greeting, waving back. Her route to school was just a 10-minute walk, which took her near the entrance to the freeway Ohio State Route 43, which starts in Steubenville and runs west to Cleveland. Standing at this intersection, you can see the brick school building that Barbara attended. Another student, a fellow 8th grader, spotted Barbara near the intersection of Brady and Ridge Avenues, but when he looked back a few minutes later, she was gone.
So a lot going on there, right? I mean, the kids are up, getting ready for school. They're going off to school. Barbara's walking to school.
It's always hectic.
Yeah.
When, you got a bunch of kids that you're trying to get ready to get off to go to school. Sounds like Barbara was pretty independent. And even, above and beyond that, she even went further and helped out, her younger siblings. But that's a lot to get, everybody ready and make sure they got something to eat. They got their lunches, whatever they need for school. Did you do your homework? We've all been there.
Oh yeah. I don't miss those mornings.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I want to go back to that because I feel like, my kids are too grown up now. They don't need me. We don't have those same interactions, but you definitely don't miss them while you're in it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull my hair out. It's probably the reason why I don't have that much. But for me, as time has gone on, I miss a lot of those kind of mundane, crazy type things that we used to think was such a hassle, I guess.
Yeah. I do remember you would always make sure your daughters got on the bus before you came into work.
Yeah, that was big for me. I watched them all the way on.
Yeah.
Once they were on, boom, I left for work. But I wanted to see them get on the bus.
Yeah, when you were my boss, I knew I had a little bit of leeway.
Because I might be a little bit late.
Yeah. Yep.
So that same day, the attendance officer for the school district was at the middle school. When Barbara didn't arrive at school and there was no call from her mother excusing her absence, he made a visit to the Barnes home, hoping to locate her, but he got no response. When he knocked on their apartment door that morning, the younger kids had already left for school and Kathy was at work. The school's principal later told the press that Barbara was a reliable young lady, known as a good kid who wasn't likely to cut class or skip school. The principal also said she was just lovely and never bothered anyone.
You know who was likely to miss class and skip school?
I would think you, Mr. Gibson.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you bothered a lot of people.
Maybe a few. Do I regret that now? Absolutely.
Yeah, we all did stuff back in the day that we regret. So at the end of the workday, Kathy Barnes returned home, where she was greeted by her two younger children, but there was no sign of her older daughter. Kathy checked with Barbara's friends and learned that she didn't make it to school that morning. Barbara's uncle, Lewis, drove Kathy to the police station to report Barbara as missing. So again, Gibbs, we talk about this in cases, but this was very quick. I think Kathy knew, right away, this wasn't like Barbara. She wouldn't do this. Something's wrong. They didn't spend hours out searching for her. It sounds like right away they made the decision, we need to go to the police.
Right. Well, she knows her daughter.
Yeah. And parents do. When they arrived at the Steubenville PD, one of the first questions Kathy was asked was whether the two of them had argued that morning. Kathy said no. There were no arguments. There was no fighting. She said it was just a normal school day morning, just a regular day. She was also asked if Barbara seemed upset or off, and Kathy said no. She told the officer that Barbara seemed like her usual self. When she left the apartment that morning, she described how her two youngest children rode the bus and Barbara walked to the middle school. Kathy gave police Barbara's physical description: height, weight, hair color. She told the police that Barbara had brown eyes, and that morning, Barbara wore a blue shirt, jeans, white tennis shoes, and a tan coat with a hood. She said she was a responsible student and carried her books and supplies in a floral print book bag. But according to plexpage.com, there was not an initial scramble to find Barbara, at least not by law enforcement anyway. She was last seen on that Thursday morning on December 7th, and apparently Gibbs' searches didn't begin until the following week after she had been missing for 3 or 4 days. Keep in mind, this is a 13-year-old girl.
We've seen this in cases before where the sense of urgency is really not there.
We have. It's not good. It always upsets us. And I think the younger that the child is, the more upset you get about it. Okay, if Barbara was 18 or older, I could understand where police might say, well, technically she's an adult. Maybe she went off. She just doesn't want to tell you where she is. I get that. But when you're 13 years old, you don't have that right.
Right.
To walk off.
No.
And I don't understand police inaction in this situation, because this is a young child. They need to be found. They need to figure out what's going on. Something could be terribly wrong. So to not even start searching for 3 or 4 days, that's very upsetting. Now we're talking about official searches, right? I think police said they kept an eye out for her. They made some calls, but when it came to official searches, those didn't start for a number of days. The family was searching. Friends were searching. It took Steubenville police until December 11th to rule out the theory that Barbara ran away from home. That's 4 days.
Critical days.
Extremely. When the searches began, they were pretty intense. The North Ohio Search and Rescue Team brought in tracker dogs who searched the route that Barbara normally took to get to school each day. They also searched the cemetery because teens like to hang out there, and they used it as a shortcut to reach the middle school, which is next to the cemetery. Police and searchers spent hours looking for Barbara, but found no evidence of her or any of her belongings. By the end of the week, police called in the Ohio Bureau of Investigation for help with the case. Okay, that I get. You spent a couple of days searching. You haven't found anything. Let's call in some help. What I don't get is waiting 4 days to start searching. That part I don't get.
Yeah, why delay the searching? And, it's good they're calling in people that deal with this stuff more frequently because you want the experts there. And I'm assuming that OBI would have more expertise in these matters.
Oh, yeah. They've done it time and time again. More expertise, more resources. You get all of that. Steubenville police also reached out to the local media, and her case was featured on the news and local television. Reporters implored anyone who drove down Brady Avenue that morning to call local law enforcement. Perhaps they saw something without realizing its significance. I think that's always important. It's something that you and I bring up a lot. You see things every day that, in the context of that moment, they mean absolutely nothing. But, okay, now you add some different layers, some more information to it. Well, now it might mean something.
Sure.
You find out that this girl went missing and was last seen at this time on this street, and you were driving down that street at that time and you saw something.
Yeah, maybe you saw a suspicious car, or you saw her get into a car.
Maybe you just saw her talking to someone.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be suspicious at all unless you knew that later on she went missing.
Exactly.
Almost 2 weeks after Barbara vanished, the police set up a local tip line so that people could call in anonymously to provide information about Barbara Barnes. On December 14th, about a week after Barbara went missing, her family and friends organized a candlelight vigil. More than 50 people from the community attended. They prayed for her safe return and raised awareness of her disappearance. Another search was arranged on December 22nd, and teams were joined by specially trained dogs who scoured the area. As neighboring communities and areas were carefully searched, they were ruled out, allowing the searchers to focus on other areas in hopes of locating Barbara. Police and fire units from other communities stepped up to help as well. They continued searching the next day, but a snowstorm moved into the area, blanketing Steubenville and the surrounding communities with several inches of snow, which severely hampered the search efforts. So that type of snow is great if you want, a picturesque type of Christmas scene. It's not very helpful.
No.
When you're searching for a missing person.
It's a nightmare for searchers. What I'm not surprised about is how the other authorities and people from neighboring communities come together to help in this search.
No, that doesn't surprise me all that much. I mean, most people want to help. And, for me, Gibbs, that thought is probably, if this happened to a young child in our community, we would hope that the surrounding communities would help us as well. So I get that.
Communities really rally when a child goes missing.
In the days before Christmas, police also put up flyers at shopping centers with Barbara's information. They hoped that someone would come forward with information about where she was that could help bring her home. 1 year earlier, on Christmas Day 1994, Barbara received a brand new bicycle. On Christmas 1995, her presents sat beneath the tree, unopened. Her mother, Kathy, was despondent. Her younger siblings, Melissa and Gary, were upset. They were afraid. Melissa started sleeping near her mother, trying to feel safe after the disappearance of her older sister. And that's a very sad image. The present sitting under the tree unopened because your child is missing and you're waiting for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think when your daughter's missing, any time would be difficult. But now it's the holiday, and it's got to hit home a little harder. And more people are coming up to her when they see her out and saying things to her, around the holiday time. And it's got to be tougher.
Yeah, because your child is supposed to be with you on Christmas. And then you think about her siblings. How could they not be scared? Okay, we don't know what happened to our sister. Did somebody grab her? Are they going to be coming after us? I mean, it's very scary. On top of the worry, they're worried about her. They want her back, but there's got to be some fear for their own safety.
Yeah, if they could get her, maybe they could get me.
Immediately after the holiday, the search resumed with volunteers scouring the area. They posted additional flyers. Searchers were frustrated, though, because they just couldn't find any evidence. But they had hope, right, that they were closer to finding her. They searched through fields, woods, parks, anywhere Barbara could be hiding or could be concealed. The searches extended beyond Steubenville. There were a lot of people, Gibbs, that looked for Barbara and who wanted her home safe.
Yeah, I mean, they just wanted this little girl to be back with her family.
As 1996 arrived, Barbara's case slipped from the headlines. Her mother, Kathy, was desperate. And, she needed support from friends, family, and the community. When her husband, Gary, was murdered years earlier, that was tough.
Well, I mean, look, you lose your husband. You finally start getting back into the groove of life, right, with your kids. And now you have to deal with the fact that your daughter is missing. I mean, that's a lot to deal with. And you're dealing with it all on your own. You don't have a spouse to turn to. This is all on you. I think that would be extremely hard to deal with.
Yeah, I think it would be tough on anyone. But Gibbs, I think it was particularly hard for Kathy. But she did the best she could to take care of herself, to take care of her family. In late February 1996, the remains of Barbara Barnes were discovered in a creek bed in Pennsylvania, not far from the Pittsburgh International Airport. On Thursday, February 22nd, road workers conducted a wetland survey and they spotted bones in a partially frozen creek bed. At first, they thought these were deer bones, but closer examination revealed there was clothing with the remains, including white tennis shoes and blue jeans. Barbara's remains were discovered at the bottom of a creek, about 100 yards from Potato Garden Road in Findlay Township, Pennsylvania. So apparently, Gibbs, it was unseasonably warm. It was about 50 degrees. Late February, Ohio, Pennsylvania area. Okay, that's pretty warm. You like those days.
Yeah, we do.
But what it did was it started to unfreeze the creek, which sent water running through the creek bed. The running water uncovered Barbara's remains, which were frozen. The body was removed on Friday, February 23rd, and transported to the coroner's office. But the coroner couldn't perform the autopsy right away. The body had to thaw out overnight before it could be performed. So the next day, the Allegheny County coroner, which just happened to be Cyril Wecht, well known in true crime circles, performed the autopsy on Barbara's remains. He noted that the body was badly decomposed. Wecht told the press that despite decomposition, the facial features can be discerned. While the exact amount of time Barbara's body had been outside was unknown, it appeared she had been dead for several weeks. Likely not all that long after she went missing on December 7th. Newspapers reported Barbara's cause of death as strangulation or smothering, but the conditions of her remains made it very difficult to pinpoint exactly how she died. Steubenville police drove Kathy to Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, so that she could identify Barbara's body. In an interview with the local paper, Kathy said she was terrified and prayed that the body was not Barbara's, but it was her. It was her daughter, Barbara. And to me, Gibbs, this is just unimaginable. To have a child missing police call you and say that remains have been found, and they want you to go ID the body to see if it is in fact your child. Unimaginable. That's the only word I can say. I don't know how you get through that. And then when it does turn out to be your child, I don't know.
I imagine that period of time as you head to the scene or wherever you're going to identify the body, it's got to feel like forever.
As the family organized her funeral, law enforcement had a few paths to pursue. And obviously they had a lot of new questions, right? The investigation shifted from a missing person to a murder. The FBI was called in to join the case. One of the first things they discovered was that the parcel of land where Barbara's body was found had a connection to Barbara's uncle, Louis Boyce. She was found within a mile or so of property owned by the Boyce family. So that's going to raise some eyebrows.
Sure.
Within the police, within the FBI, it's going to seem strange, especially given the fact that she was transported over 40 miles away from Steubenville. Her killer buried her remains in a shallow creekside grave, right? This wasn't a mile away. It wasn't 2 miles away, but it was just a mile or so from a property owned by some of her family members.
Which is pretty bizarre.
It is bizarre. I mean, I think from the standpoint of police, you're either talking about something nefarious. Well, we already know something nefarious happened, but you're talking about a criminal connection, or you're talking about the strangest coincidence that could ever happen.
Yeah.
And that's what they have to figure out. On February 27th, 1996, a funeral was held for Barbara Barnes. It was 7 years and 1 month after the funeral for her father, Gary. Her sister, Melissa, was 10 years old, and her brother, Gary, was 6 years old at the time of her funeral. Kathy didn't have the money to pay for the funeral, so the town rallied around her. They paid for Barbara's service, and they got enough donations to purchase a headstone. So that's touching stuff.
It really is.
That people would come to her aid, in this moment of grief. That's amazing.
Says a lot about the community, the county that she lived in.
The people. Yeah, it really does. So Barbara was able to have a really nice funeral. Her casket was mauve with silver trim. A local printer donated 300 programs for attendees, but these weren't nearly enough because so many people came out to show their support, to pay their respects, classmates, friends. It seemed, Gibbs, as though anybody who knew Barbara, had ever met Barbara, or were just touched by what happened to her, came out to show their support.
Yeah, this small community really came through.
Louis Boyce was quoted in the press as saying, "Parents of the world, protect your children." When he was asked his opinion on who could be responsible for Barbara's murder, he said that Barbara would never have gotten into a strange vehicle. And Louis Boyce really became the family spokesperson. For one thing, Gibbs, Kathy was so distraught. She was not able to speak with the press.
Yeah, I think Barbara was a very intelligent young woman. I agree. I don't think she would have gotten into a vehicle unless she knew somebody.
Yeah, and I think that goes for a lot of kids her age. I mean, as parents, we drill that into our kids, right? They get that message on TV programs. They get it at school. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but most kids know not to get into a vehicle with strangers.
Yeah.
Or a stranger.
Yeah, and at 13, you've got some pretty good wits about yourself.
Yeah, by that point, sure. Phyllis Rickdonna, program director for Jefferson County Courts, stepped in to help the Barnes family relocate to a new apartment. You got to do that, Gibbs, right? The memories would just be too painful.
Yeah, I'd have to move also. There's no way I could stay in a place like that after everything that's happened.
There's too many memories, and they would, they'd hit you in the face at every turn. You're going to have them anyway, but I think, you got to get to a different place. Now, not everybody agrees. There are some people, and we've done a number of cases, they never want to leave that place because of the memories.
Yeah.
So I think it probably cuts both ways. Phyllis and her husband also put up a $10,000 cash reward for anyone who could provide information that led to the arrest of the person who killed Barbara. She then helped Kathy get a job so that Kathy could better provide for her children. So this lady's kind of amazing.
Actually, yeah. I mean,
she really stepped in. She did a lot for Kathy and the family. So the FBI and local law enforcement, they had a big investigation on their hands. They attempted to find out how she ended up in Pennsylvania, near property owned by her uncle. And like I said, they had to be suspicious of Louis Boyce, maybe other members of the Boyce family, because they're asking the question, Gibbs, if someone in the family didn't have anything to do with this, how did the killer know to pick this location? Why did the killer pick this location?
yeah, of all the locations you could drive to. Yes, you got to wonder, is it somebody that had an issue with the Boyce family and wanted them to pay the price for some reason?
Yeah, or they knew about this land, knew that they owned this land, and knew that police would be suspicious of them. Who knows?
Well, it's one good way to get police off your trail and make them suspicious of the Boyce family.
Authorities had a number of other questions. Where was Barbara picked up on her walk to school? Was it on the busy road near the freeway entrance, or could her classmate have been mistaken that day?
Well, could have, right? I mean, he said he saw Barbara walking by that intersection. Minutes later, turned around to see that she was gone. I don't know what minutes later means, right?
Is it 1 minute, 2 minutes, or minutes? Is 2 minutes, 5 minutes? We don't know.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a few seconds for someone to disappear. So could she decided to go a different direction? Did she get in a car with somebody? We don't know.
You're also talking about a child who maybe could have lost track of the timing,
Sure,
of everything. How did her abductor get her into his car without being seen or heard? Did Barbara know her killer? Did she go with him willingly? So again, these are just some of the unanswered questions that investigators had to try to answer.
And I think questions we're all asking ourselves.
Absolutely, because we're amateur detectives. We're, quasi investigators. It's kind of what we do. I mean, we talked about it, right? Steubenville, Ohio is a relatively small town. Immediately after Barbara was found murdered, the rumor mill started churning. And I think a lot of the rumors, Gibbs, had to do with Barbara's family. Could they have been responsible for her death? There were some rumors that Barbara's father, Gary's murder, was a setup and that his death was orchestrated by someone close to the family. According to TribLive.com, the authorities looked at Louis Boyce as a potential suspect. I don't know how they couldn't have, Gibbs. I mean, first of all, he was Barbara's uncle,
Right.
Close family member. She would have gotten into a car with him. She knew him.
Sure.
No reason not to. Lewis's family owned the property close to where Barbara was found. Investigators found shovels at the Boyce property and had the soil on those shovels tested against the dirt where Barbara's body was found. They didn't match. And investigators didn't have additional evidence. Louis did take a polygraph test and reportedly failed it.
Which is not great, but we also know that happens.
It does. I think when the community found that out, there was a lot of rumors, right, about his involvement, his guilt. But friends and family of Louis, they stood up for him and claimed that he was not involved, couldn't have been involved. He loved Barbara. Louis eventually obtained a lawyer and refused to speak with the police any further. Now, he should have done that from the get-go.
Sure, yeah.
And the lawyer would have said, do not take a polygraph test.
Don't do
There's no reason for you to do that.
But I can understand the community. I can see how this probably got built up to something bigger than maybe it really was. People talking at the diner. Well, they found her body.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look good for him, right? There was no evidence to say that he did it, but when you looked at, some of the circumstantial stuff, yeah, it doesn't look great.
No.
40 miles away, her body's found just a mile from a property he owns. Okay, that's sketchy.
Yeah. We already took a lie detector test and didn't pass it.
Yeah, and a lot of people put a tremendous amount of faith in that, or have over the years. You and I, not quite as much.
And now he doesn't want to talk to the police anymore. He's got an attorney.
And people make a lot out of that sometimes when they really shouldn't. It doesn't mean that at all, that somebody's guilty. It actually means they're smart.
Smart, exactly.
They're doing what they really should be doing. So, Gibbs, let's shift away from Lewis Boyce and talk about an alleged person of interest in Steubenville who may have had a reason to want to harm Barbara, someone who may have wanted to silence her because he had done something that might have caused her to speak to authorities. This guy's name was Richard Kolling, and he was in his early 50s when Barbara disappeared. He was also known to both the Barnes and Boyce families. He lived near the Euclid Street apartments, where the Barnes and Boyce families called home. Richard was born in 1943 and amassed a pretty lengthy criminal record. In 1964, when he was 21 years old, he escaped from the Grafton prison farm, part of the Grafton Correctional Facility, about 130 miles north of Steubenville, not too far from Cleveland. Kolling was captured and his sentence extended to reflect his bad behavior. According to the Akron Beacon Journal, in 1977, Kolling and his wife were arrested and charged with child endangerment and sexual battery.
Sounds like a real winner.
So far. Now, some of the following information about Richard Kolling comes from a Reddit post by Nina Instead. Nina's a friend of ours. She's a fellow podcaster of the Already Gone podcast. She was able to obtain a news article from someone close to this case. In 1995, Kolling was living in the Steubenville area. And according to Melissa, the 10-year-old sister of Barbara, Kolling molested her. Melissa confided in her sister that Kolling had assaulted her on several occasions. Barbara may have even spoken to Kolling herself, telling him to stay away from her sister. The theory is that Kolling approached Barbara that December morning as she walked to school, inviting her into his car so that they could talk. So, Gibbs, we know that Melissa told Barbara about the assaults. What we don't know is what Barbara did with this information. So this is interesting. And this is information that would put this guy, squarely on the radar of police. I think from the police perspective, if Barbara knew, right, about these assaults, and this guy knew that she knew, and he made the decision that he didn't want to get in trouble because he was fearful that she would tell the authorities, that would be reason enough to want to silence her.
Yeah, because there's no way this guy wants to go back to prison. We know he doesn't like prison. He's escaped from prison before.
And while Barbara never got the chance to tell an adult about the abuse, Melissa found the courage to go to an adult with it herself after Barbara's funeral. She told her mom the whole story, how Richard Kolling had sexually assaulted her and that she had confided in Barbara. Melissa told her story to law enforcement, and the police and prosecutors built a case against Kolling. But somehow Kolling got a heads up about prosecutors getting an indictment for his arrest for the sexual assault of a minor, so he fled Ohio for Arizona. Richard Kolling was arrested in Arizona and extradited to Ohio to face charges. In September 1996, Richard Kolling was brought before a Steubenville court where a judge ordered that he be bound over to the Jefferson County District Court. In 1997, the case was presented to a Jefferson County grand jury. 11-year-old Melissa Barnes took the stand to testify against Kolling, saying he had assaulted her on numerous occasions in 1995. She continued to say that she had confided in her sister about the assaults. So this is tough stuff.
It is tough stuff.
Gibbs, I mean, you've got an 11-year-old girl taking the stand to testify against her attacker.
Yeah.
Unbelievably brave. No, there's no doubt about that. This is also a little girl whose sister was murdered.
Yeah, coming off the heels of her sister's death. Not easy.
No, not easy at all. The problem is the grand jury decided that they didn't have enough evidence to move forward with the charges. So that same year, Kathy Barnes filed a civil suit against Richard Kolling for the sexual assault of Melissa and the death of Barbara. So I don't think it's hard to figure out what the theory would be here, right? It's that Kolling murdered Barbara Barnes to keep her from telling law enforcement about the sexual assault of her younger sister. And I think it's twofold. First of all, he wouldn't have wanted law enforcement to find out about it.
Right.
And then I think, secondly, he may have thought that if Barbara was not alive, then she couldn't testify against him. So I understand that theory. The question I have about that is, why kill Barbara and not Melissa?
Right. The person that can really do some damage to you.
Yeah. Melissa is the one who can testify as to exactly what happened.
Right.
Barbara could only testify to what she was told. And a lot of times that's not even admissible in court. A lot of times that gets called hearsay evidence and it's not allowed. So I get the theory, but I'm also kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
Wondering why that would make sense versus, trying to silence Melissa.
Could just be another tragic event that unfolded on this family, but unrelated to Barbara's murder.
It could be.
Yeah.
It's also possible that Richard Kolling stopped Barbara that morning, telling her that maybe he was sorry for what he did to her sister, that he would stop. They needed to talk about it. I mean, all of this is possible, right? It's just, these are all just theories. We'll never know, most likely, if he was involved in Barbara's murder, because Richard Kolling died in 2009 at the age of 64. So unless he told someone else about the fact that he murdered a 13-year-old girl, he would have taken that information with him to the grave. As we wrap up this episode, Gibbs, no one has ever been convicted for the death of Barbara Barnes. In fact, there has not been a single person, to my knowledge, who investigators have officially named a suspect. So the person who murdered Barbara and concealed her body remains unknown. I mean, I think, we talked about a couple of people. I think it would be impossible for police not to have looked at both of these individuals.
Right.
Louis Boyce, family member, inner circle. Barbara's remains were found very close to a piece of property that he owned or was owned by the family. It was like 40 miles away from, where they all lived, from where Barbara disappeared. So, again, that is either a piece of circumstantial evidence or it's the strangest coincidence ever. And it very likely could be.
Sure, yeah.
We also theorize that possibly whoever killed Barbara placed her body there maybe to cast suspicion on the family. They knew about this parcel of land and they put her body there on purpose.
And we know Richard Kolling knew both family members, right? He knew the Boyce family. He knew the Barnes family. So maybe he knew about this piece of land over near Pittsburgh.
And you have the alleged sexual assault of Melissa. I have to say alleged because he was never convicted of it. And the fact that Melissa said she confided to her sister about all of it.
Right.
So, again, either, I think as you said, just really tragic situation that happened to this family on top of all the other tragedies that they went through, or there's something to it, right? There's only two things.
Exactly. Yeah.
He either had something to do with it or he didn't. But it is possible, like you said, that because of his ties to the family, he may have known about that parcel of land. We don't know.
And we're never going to know.
We probably never will. And that's the sad part. But that's it, Gibbs, for our case on the murder of Barbara Barnes. This one, it's really hard for me to, go one way or the other. There's just not enough evidence to really say that I believe, this person was involved or that person was involved. This could have been somebody completely different.
Yeah.
A stranger, someone not known to the family, a predator who saw Barbara walking and scooped her up.
I mean, the one thing I can say is that, it seems unlikely that it could be solved, but, just a few days ago, you mentioned it on our Patreon episode that the Denver Hammer murders, after what? How many years was that?
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time, about 38 years or something since the murders occurred. Alex Ewing was finally convicted, sentenced, and all of that. So you never say never.
Exactly.
Because we see it time after time where some of these get solved many, many years later. But the problem is, if the perpetrator is dead, okay, you might find out or you might have enough evidence to kind of point the finger at that person.
Right.
But unlike Alex Ewing, you're not going to get the person in court, get a conviction, be able to sentence that person and see them, face punishment.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen if the perpetrator is dead. If it really turned out that Richard Kolling was involved, the guy's been dead for 12 years.
Right. You're just going to get answers to some of your questions, but you're not going to see him pay for what he did.
Yeah. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, Serum.
Hi, guys. This is Susan from over in Illinois. I just wanted to tell you that I have become so structured with my podcast. I listen to true crime all the time first, then I do Unsolved, and then I listen to criminology. And I find myself, after criminology is over, I'm like, gosh, I really miss Gibby. Sorry for my coworker. That's no offense to him. Just, I really enjoy that. So I'm finishing up Sunday's episode of criminology, and I'll be ready for you and Gibby tomorrow when it shows up on Stitcher. You guys are great. I really, really love this podcast, and you do an excellent job. So stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Well, I miss myself on criminology too. They stuck me on there a few times.
You've been on a couple of times. Yeah. Morph's been on at least one Unsolved episode.
Yeah.
So go back and forth a little bit. We need to do more of that, but we appreciate the kind words always.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Cindy Calhoun. Thank you so much for the nice email you wrote me the other night. I've been out I've been without a computer for 2 months. The one that I had before, this will be my third laptop. The one that I had for 4 years from 2016 on, the drive just went out. So anyway, I'm just now catching up with all the episodes since I did listen to the one on June, the first Sunday in June, and then after that I got to catch up, and I'm catching up now. But anyway, I hope you will continue to think about doing the case of Baby Sterling. I listened to the trial proceedings on YouTube about 2 years ago, and it really cried. I really cried over it. But anyway, and also I hope both of y'all had great birthdays. I wasn't able to do Facebook, so I haven't forgotten to write you. But anyway, I hope you have a meaningful week, and I hope y'all had great birthdays this summer, and keep your own time ticking.
Man, I went through a lot of laptops too.
You have.
But I'm also cheap on the ones I've bought in the past, so.
And I think if you remember, I warned you against some of your previous purchases.
Yeah, you did.
And unfortunately, I turned out to be right. So love Cindy. She has been a listener for a very long time. She also communicates with us on a regular basis. She's been asking me to do that Baby Sterling case for a long time.
Yeah.
It's on the list, but it's a very tough one. I don't know if it's in the same category as the Jamie Bolger case, but I think it probably is. It's just going to be one of those really tough ones. And sometimes I look at those and I'm like, I don't know if I can do it right now.
Right.
And I put it to the side and then I go on to something else, but we appreciate it very much.
Hey guys, it's Dispatcher Lisa. And I was listening to the Chicago Strangler while I was mowing, and I had to stop mowing and bring up a point that I don't know if you made. When you're talking about the crime rate and the rate of solved cases in Illinois, you have to remember that Chicago skews the numbers quite a bit because there are so many like drive-by shootings and things like that don't get solved, but you don't take into consideration the number of crimes that are solved down in downstate Illinois. So, being I'm from downstate Illinois, if you couldn't tell, I just thought I'd have to bring that up. I hope you guys are having a great day. Keep your own time tick and keep your head on the swivel.
Yeah, it's a great point. I don't think you and I touched on it. Chicago does have a large number of drive-by shootings. Those are very tough to solve.
Of course, yeah.
So I do get that Chicago's numbers skew probably the rest of the state. My thought is they probably would have done that in the 60s and 70s as well. So I don't know. I still think that's an interesting topic. that unsolved rate going down.
Yeah.
Hey, TCAT boys, an accountant here from Western Massachusetts. First of all, I just want to say I am Team Mike, but I do have to say, when you guys are talking about the Chicago Strangler and the statistics on the solve rate, Gibby did get passed up on a very good point that as technology has advanced, so hasn't the criminal. But when you look at the solve rates earlier on, before technology advanced, and now that technology has advanced, it makes you wonder if the solve rate is lower because that they got it wrong. Like, how many people have we seen that have been released because they were wrongfully convicted? So it just makes you wonder, were they getting it wrong early on because they didn't have that technology and wrong people were being imprisoned for stuff they didn't do? But anyways, love you guys' podcast. Love your show. Stay safe. Keep your own time ticking. Keep your head on a swivel and keep that TCAT skepticism alive. Take care, boys.
So I think a lot of people did find that discussion kind of interesting. So my thought on that is, if the solved rate for homicides goes down because of that reason, great. Because I think you and I have talked about it many times. We know in the past, places have moved forward with cases where they didn't have the evidence. Now, they were able to get a conviction, but they didn't have the evidence that they really should have.
Right.
Whether it was because they presented it to the jury in such a technical way that the jury thought, well, this must mean that the person is guilty. We've seen those cases. I guess what I'm saying is I'm a big believer that, prosecutors shouldn't move forward with trial if they really don't have the evidence, right? It shouldn't be let's throw everything at the wall type of scenario.
Right.
And if that's the reason for it going down, so be it. I'm okay with that.
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a good point. It's something that I don't think you and I thought about.
No, we didn't.
While we were having our discussion. All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.